Hello and welcome to the Martial Arts Lineage podcast, where we talk with masters of the martial arts from all around the world and hear their stories and insights. You can find out more about the Martial Arts Lineage Project and create your own lineage tree at www.malineage.com. I caught up with Professor Barbara Bones at the annual Association of Women Martial Arts Instructors, where she was giving the keynote address. An important figure in the Kajukenbo world, Professor Bones began training in 1971 and is now an 8th degree Kajukenbo black belt. She also has trained in modern arnis with Professor Remy Presas. Professor Bones was named one of the top 5 female competitors by Black Belt magazine in 1975 and for many years ran Amazon Kung Fu in Eugene, Oregon. She graduated many students to black belt, including Professor Colleen Grajan and Sifu Ann Moon. Through this lineage, 3 prominent Kajukenbo schools have arisen. Hand-to-Hand Kajukenbo, now led by Chief Instructor Sonia Richardson, Seattle Kajukenbo, led by Chief Instructor Melinda Johnson, and 7-Star Women's Kung Fu, led by Chief Instructor Michelle McVaden. These schools have promoted more than 65 black belts and have made significant advances and contributions to the women's martial arts movement, the welfare and well-being of their respective communities, and the art of Kajukenbo as a whole. That looks good to me. All right, awesome. I'm so glad that this worked out, and I loved your talk, and I think it's going to be very relevant for this project, which is all about, who did you train with, and what did they give to you, what did you take from them and pass on to your students? And so I'll just start just by asking, how did you get interested in martial arts? It was 1970, 71?
Yeah, I'd say 71, late 70, almost 71. When I started. And how did I get interested? I had a friend who was practicing in Kajukenbo, actually.
A woman or a man?
A woman, named Joyce Town. And we had played basketball together, and we were both out of college, so it seemed like a way to stay active and look like fun.
So it's like a fitness kind of
It wasn't
thing,
exactly
mostly,
fitness, it was just movement, yeah. We were already fit. We were young.
So you started with Kajukenbo?
No, actually. She sort of suggested that to start with Taekwondo because there was a teacher named Bruce Combs who was known in the area and known to be pretty good. And I started with him. And it was just what you think of as Taekwondo was traditional art style, heavily kicking Taekwondo.
And did you love it right away? Or
I loved it. I worked out really hard. I started training hard from the beginning, and the thing is that my friend was still training in Kajukenbo, so I used to sit outside her class, which was in a place called Girlinger Dance Studio in Eugene, Oregon, and it had all windows on the outside. The door, it had a lot of doors that all had windows, so you could peer into the class. So I would sit out there and I would memorize their forms and their punching attacks and things like that. And then I would go down the breezeway out of sight to them and then practice them. But I had a rule at the time that I could not practice any Kajukenbo until I had done all my Taekwondo stuff a certain number of times. And so my Taekwondo got very good. But I realized I made it all the way to green belt, but quickly in Taekwondo, but I realized not that deep into it that I had more passion for Kaj.
Because of the more real world, self-defense? What was it about it?
I think it was just the movement itself. It was more fluid. It was more diverse, you might say. Had, the palette of the artist, there were more colors.
And by diverse, you mean the kata, the combinations, all the different types of curricular elements?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I love that about I do Kempo karate, but we have all the same things. That's good because you're never bored.
Right.
There's always something different
right.
that you don't know and need to master.
Right. And also, just from the point of view, I didn't think of it that way at that time, but in retrospect, from the point of view of a woman fighting against larger, stronger people, Kajukenbo is way more evasive and doesn't ever try to challenge power with power. And so Taekwondo didn't have that alternative. It's like if something comes, your block has to be stronger than the technique coming in, because it's hard style blocking. And so I think it was the defensive aspect of Kajukenbo that was, and plus that's more my temperament. When I was a competitor, I won as a counterfighter more than as an aggressor.
And did you ever try Keto or one of those
No.
arts that
No.
is all that way?
No, I never liked to go to the mat that much.
Okay, cool. And so Kajukenbo is the main style that you've trained in, or were there other ones?
It's the main style and really the only kind of external style that I trained in. In those early days, I trained in a Yang style of Tai Chi form. Although it's interesting because it's not like Yang style now, it's sort of like old Yang style. Almost like, I want to say, pre-communist government Yang style. So it's different. But the modern Yang style has a lot of drawing back and then going forward, and old style just has continuously moving forward. It doesn't have that kind of gathering and expressing. It has like a wave of expression.
So you like a constant flow.
I do. Seems natural.
Yeah.
To me.
And who are some
and actually another aspect, not so much of the very early years, but so what happened is after I got my brown belt, my Sifu, whose name is Richard Menenti, decided to go to Denver and train with Aldo Cascos in One Hopkins Dome, and so off he went. And so we stayed behind and kind of kept the class going, myself and Joyce, and we found we still had a lot of hunger to train with Sifu. And so prior to the time we left, his teacher came and promoted both of us to student black because he wanted us to kind of have that, well, I don't know what his motives were, but I think what he wanted is that there be a black belt organizing that group. Organizing that group. But eventually, and not that long after, we decided we were going to Denver as well. And so we went, and along with another one of the black belts in the group called Dave Poole. And Fred King, who was another one of our group, was already there. So we basically picked up that Eugene core group of the students of Sifu Menenti and transplanted to Denver.
Now this is a commitment when you move to another state for your martial arts. So when did you start to feel like it was such an important part of your life that you might
That move
actually
happened
move
in
to?
like 73 or something like that.
So did it kind of
It
build
was a
up
very short
gradually,
time.
the importance?
I changed
over
styles
those
and already got a black belt. It was a gradual, no. I was always just insanely, rapidly training from like day one almost.
And was that true for all sports and things that you did, or was there something about the
I don't think I knew how to
martial
train
arts?
till the martial arts. I think the martial arts gave me the structure to really practice.
Yeah, I think that's a great aspect of it.
And then later, just to go through the other teachers. So my Tai Chi teacher was a guy named Eddie Chang. He was a PhD candidate and a mathematician. He was a really tall, very lithe guy. And actually, he interpreted the Tai Chi in a way more similar to our Kajukenbo forms. He was very energetic. He was a great teacher.
Does that mean it was faster? I'm trying to think of energetic Tai Chi.
No, it wasn't faster.
How is it?
It was brighter. It was more brilliant. It was more
different
radiant.
kind of energy? Or?
Yeah, I mean, like you can interpret a dragon as a human being doing a dragon, or you can become a dragon. He was more of a method actor.
Cool.
So in that way, more energetic. And then years later, after I got back from Denver, Joyce, not too long after we got back, we opened a school in Eugene called Amazon Kung Fu. And at least one student, most of the women in the martial arts now know of, who was one of our early students there, and that's Colleen Gregan.
Right.
And Colleen Gregan obviously stayed with Kajukenbo till her death. And there were a few others there. Ann Moon went not the exact same time, but when Colleen moved to the Bay Area and opened up what became Hand to Hand. Ann Moon moved to Seattle and opened 7 Star. So I had a couple of skillful students who both moved on to open schools, not long after they got their first degree. And I just philosophically, I'm somebody who sort of kicks people out of the nest. I don't cling to them and have them help me run my school, because I don't have a school now. But even then, when I had one, I didn't. I felt like I had so much benefit from learning to teach early in my training, and to have that structure to re-examine the technique, and also have all these other kind of opportunities to see what obstructed the technique from being perfect, and learn how to get around that. I mean, it was just great teaching. I don't know if it was as great for them as it was for me, but for me it was great because it gave me more tools to work on myself, and that was awesome. And so I think so when we came back, we opened that school, but not long after, Joyce decided to kind of do something else, and so I was looking for people to train with, and I started training a lot. I would go up to Portland and train a lot with another martial artist that people know named Janisa Cruzy. And Janisa Cruzy, you good?
Yeah, new camera, so I just make sure it's still recording.
So Janisa Cruzy, at the time, trained in American karate, and we just practiced a lot. But one of the things that happened is Grandmaster Remy Precis came into town, and we took classes with him. Excuse me, and we both really loved the art of arnis, and so it brought us together a lot of times just to practice. So we had partners, and then so I think each person who trained me, gave me countless things, but Sifu Manenti, I think, gave me like the heart of a warrior, really. That practice, the way we practiced, the amount of combat that we did, the kind of toughness that we had. We were a cadre of warriors. We were very united. There were a lot of Fred King was in that group. There were a lot of really skillful, dedicated people.
And what would be an example of that art style of training?
Just
getting hit with a stick.
Sifu was there one day a week. We were there 7 days a week. So we just practiced hard. We sparred hard. We challenged each other. We questioned each other's technique. We gave each other feedback. We're like brothers and sisters, obviously, but they were mostly brothers. And
that sounds like a great group.
Yeah, it was a really fantastic group. And so that kind of heart of a warrior came from those years of training, for sure. Eddie really, it was interesting to have a hard style and a soft style at the same time at the very beginning for me, because one of the things that comes slowly to people who do external styles is a kind of groundedness and delivering power from the floor up, from the legs up. And but I trained in Tai Chi at the very beginning, so what happened was that that kind of groundedness and that kind of power from the whole body moving and the synchronization and the timing of everything working together because of the coordination required for Tai Chi and everything. So I was able to integrate all of that back into Kajukenbo immediately, as it was happening, as I was learning it. So that kind of fluidity and groundedness and actually body connection I actually got from Eddie.
And do you teach any of that when you're teaching Kajukenbo? Try to bring that.
Oh, absolutely. But they're not separate anymore. I couldn't possibly separate them. And then I would say Grandmaster Precis. Grandmaster Precis, I think I want to say the most important lesson that he gave me was up until that time, I had already promoted people to black belt and so on, but up until that time, I would look at somebody, take Colleen Gregan as an example. Colleen's very skillful, and always was, actually. And I would watch her movement, and I would say, I think if you modified this movement in this way, it would be better. And she would work on that. But what I didn't say is, wow, that's amazing. I didn't say it very much. That wasn't my style of teaching. My style was to chip away at any imperfection until we got closer to perfection. when I trained with Grandmaster Prasis, he would very often have a room that had maybe like 50% people from the martial arts and 50% people who didn't know anything. And many of them were very uncoordinated and didn't have a clue really what they were doing. And he would pull somebody out of class who was doing something not very well by my critical eye. And he would stop a class of like 50 people and he would say, "Oh my God, look at this, they've got it." And I'd be looking at it like, did they? Do they have it? You know, it was confusing in the beginning, but then I realized what happened over the ensuing couple of years is those people always came back, and they were always better. And what he did is he praised even the tiniest little incremental improvement profusely, publicly and profusely, in a big way. And because of that, people opened their heart to the love of the art right away, and they felt successful. Even a little bit more successful was enough. And from then on, I use that more. I still have my other side. It's probably more innate to me.
Did you find it changed your own self-talk about your own technique?
Actually, maybe. I don't remember that though. It's possible. But I do know it changed how I was teaching. It changed, like, I remember going to teach hand-to-hand, after a year of training with Professor Prasis. And I don't know, I realized I must have been hard on them because they were a little bit timid, and I'd sort of grown out of that, whatever it was that was creating that.
Yeah.
And I was just kind of looking at them like, what's going on? And, but I think I've made the full move more towards the teaching style of Professor Prasis than my original temperament.
Yeah, we have a thing, correct praise.
Mm-hmm.
You give people some kind of positive feedback so they don't feel horrible about themselves, but then they also have something to work on at the same time.
Yeah, well, I think one thing I totally believe in is like challenging people a lot. So that hasn't changed.
Yeah, that's one of the great things about it. That's what I love about it.
I mean, and it's,
think you could do.
I'm not there teaching all the time. I'm hardly ever there teaching. Occasional seminars, but the times when I most often get invited are black belt tests. And so, like often before a black belt test, one of the instructors will say, they'll kind of fill me in on where this person's at and what their challenges are and so on. And they're like, I just can't get them to do something. And I'm like, oh, I'll get them to do it. And they're like, I know, that's why you're here. And it's just being like utterly blunt.
And how does that, is that just like you're doing it wrong?
Sometimes.
Informing them, or is it
I'll tell you
a way of delivering
I'll tell you two examples. They might not shed the best light on it.
Yeah, I think everything.
And so, like one example is, there was a fellow after Colleen's death who was testing for black belt, and his core was not strong. The middle of his body was not, like most men are pretty strong, but more often their core is not as strong as their externals. And so I set him out in horse stance, and I had him holding his hands out like this, and I was asking him questions, and he kept going like this, and I'm like, this isn't going to end until you stand there and hold your hands out. And he kept kind of collapsing, and I'm like, seriously, you have to stop doing it. You don't make it through this test if you continue to behave that way, if you continue to give up. And he goes, well, I'm trying to channel Colleen. And I'm like, let me tell you straight away, if I asked Colleen to stand there in a horse stance and hold her hands out, if she passed out, it would be in that position. She would not move, and she would not do what you're doing. So if you're going to channel her, honor her, and do it. And then he did. But he was a guy who, showed that kind of softness, and as teachers, when we're chronically in the room with them, they get away with it all the time.
So you can come in.
So yeah, I come in and be the bad cop. Yeah.
No,
just say, you know what, you can't get away with it.
Later on, they might call you up and thank you.
So far, no.
So,
I think it kind of scares them a little bit.
Sometimes it's hard to make yourself do something, but someone else can help you find that thing within you that you didn't know was there?
Yeah, one hopes.
Sort of martial
One
arts
hopes,
teaching.
because one more example was that somebody who was testing for black and said to me, well, actually her forward stance was all screwed up. She's testing for black and her forward stance is screwed up. I'm like, what is going on? And she said, well, like, mentally I know it, but like the top half of my body energetically doesn't reach the bottom half of my body, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, well, here's the deal. You won't get your black belt with that stance. If you want your black belt, you need to correct it, and you need to correct it now. And she did. I'm just saying that, all that time, nobody said it as firmly or as directly, or she wasn't as receptive to whatever the message had been all that time until then. So for 8 years she didn't correct it, and in 5 minutes she did.
Wow.
So that's what I'm saying. Is like sometimes I'm in a position where I can be just really blunt, and people will take it from me. They don't have another process with me that they can
go back to.
Yeah.
Well, Kajukenbo is known for its hard style of training. Do you think that's changed over the years, or is it still?
I don't think so.
That's great. Cool. And then you mentioned in your talk, and I read also that there's this creative element to Kajukenbo. Mm-hmm. And what exactly is that? Like, how does that manifest in the classroom?
I think in the classroom, not as much. Honestly, because most of the time the classroom is directed, and there's more like unity and everybody doing things in the same way. Although, as you advance, more often you're asked to create your own forms or create your own understanding of things that you're able to demonstrate later, or branch out into weapons that were part of the system, or anything. So, but all the forms
for you. You said you.
Yeah, I think for me, I think it was that if you watch a room full of people doing Pinyon 14, they're all doing Pinyon 14, but it's not like some systems that are more traditional, where they're all doing it exactly alike. Like at the Olympics, when you saw like a cast of thousands doing something, and they were all perfectly in unison and doing it exactly the same way. That doesn't happen in Kajukenbo. We're all doing Pinyon 14, but we're not all doing it exactly the same way. Unless called upon to demonstrate and keep them safe. There's freedom there, different emphasis. I mean, part of the creativity or the way that I made choices was based on parrying more, just like the transition from Taekwondo, getting out of the way, and having great timing versus sheer aggression. And I would challenge myself also to go in, because bigger, stronger people have less leverage when you're close to them. So it's an advantage to be able to stick right on them and get inside their strength.
I've been working on trying to get in because I feel like going back out.
So the best way to get in, just for you.
Yeah.
Did you train in Arnis at all?
Nope.
You might want to train in Arnis because in Arnis you're at the range of the stick, and it's a very, very dangerous place. Because as bad as it is to be at the range of a kick, a stick is worse because it hurts much more when it hits you. So the safe place is inside the wrist, basically, inside the stick. And you learn in that art to go in. But you can go in anytime, actually. You just have to commit to going.
Yeah. You take the plunge.
Well, hopefully it's more than a plunge. But yes, you just go in.
Yeah, it's not my natural instinct, so.
Nor mine, but I can go in now.
But I think it's good.
I mean, the problem is that you have to do it tactically, because people will back up and keep you at their desired range. So you have to go in and get in.
True. Easier said than done.
No, it's easy. It's easy. You could do it.
I tried.
I'll show you later.
I tried. Okay. Is there anything in particular that's like kept you inspired to do martial arts? Did you always just love it and do it all the time, or was there any time where you thought, look, I've had it?
No. It's completely changed over the years. But so I started teaching early, as you know. I started teaching after I got my green belt, and and I was still competing a lot. And so, in the early years, there were tournaments and going. They were all open tournaments, so I saw people with a lot of different styles, and stole liberally all the time anything that worked, and tried to figure out what they were doing. So it was a great classroom. And but after a while, after I came back from Denver, what happened in Denver actually was two things. In Denver's where I met my meditation master, and that propelled me to think about things in a different way. And I had experiences during those times that I spent with him. His name's Swami Muktananda. Swami Muktananda took samadhi or passed away in 1982. But I think during that, is that the right date? I think it is the right date. But when I met him and when we learned his style of meditation and his, I want to say, not to sound too cosmic, but he, through his grace received Shaktipat, which is the awakening of the Kundalini, then your meditation path can grow fairly quickly. And what I found was that the mysteries and the power of self-knowledge on the inside is, and what you learn on the outside in the martial arts is grammar school, and this is postdoc. It's like it's really different. So I felt like during that time in Denver that after meeting Baba that my path was to explore that inner path, learn more about that, and I could tell it was the most important thing. And
that you felt that after you started doing the meditation, or is it something that you felt before?
Well, I felt it when I was in his presence. And
how did it connect with the external?
In the beginning, not so much, but I'll tell you a story about it. So I came back from a weekend with Baba, and what would happen there to me, maybe not to everybody, but to me, is I would be blissful. And it's a kind of bliss that's not related to any experience. It's not related to any accomplishment, any relationship. It is like inside out bliss. And it's not happiness, it's bliss. It's different. And so when I came back to our school in Denver, where my Sifu, Richard Manetti, was there, he took a look at me when I walked in the door, and he knew something had shifted. Because we trained together a lot. And his immediate response was, why don't you go put your uniform on, let's go spar. And it was almost like I'm taking control again, right? And I remember having the thought that I could either go spar or not. Whereas before I would have always been dutifully obedient. I remember thinking, I could really do either one. And then I thought, I wonder if my state is solid enough that I can keep this state while sparring, because he's going to win. I mean, he was really, really good. He's going to hit me a lot of times. And so I thought, oh yeah, that should be interesting. So I went and put on my uniform, and we sparred for maybe like 20 minutes. And seriously, he hit me just as much as he ever did. And it's not like my sparring improved, except it did it slightly, because I was able to score on him a lot more frequently than usual, because I was not at the least bit bothered by him hitting me anymore. It was it just didn't hit me where it counted on the inside. It didn't move it didn't take me to fear or caution or anything, So kind of at the end of that, we stopped, and he's like, should I be worried? And I was like, interesting question. I'm like, worried about what? And he kind of hemmed and hawed. I'm like, are you worried? Because, following a guru to India, that would be like really radical, and Jim Jones happened, and, stuff happened, so people were paranoid. And I said to him, Sifu, are you worried that if Muktananda said to me, sell or give me all your worldly goods and follow me to India, that I would do that? And he goes, well, yeah, that is what I'm worried about. And I said, well, truth is, if he said that to me, I would do it in a heartbeat. So if you care to worry about that, you're free to. I don't think it's going to happen, but that, and so it changed kind of my emphasis. Even though I still love the art and everything about it, it changed my emphasis. Then, not long after, Al DeCoscos called us to a meeting, all the black belts in the DeCoscos schools, called us to a meeting, and
is this one of the sessions? No?
I think they're all through that other door.
Yeah. So you have to walk through that whole first room to get to this.
Yeah. And so he called us to this meeting, and apparently some of his, a couple of his like brown belts or something, had gone to a tournament and they had, God forbid, done their forms to music. Now at the time, there was no music being used in forms and competition, but probably like 6 months later it was done all the time.
Yeah,
They were just cutting edge guys, and they worked out to music. And
so this was like
they just
a
thought it
crisis
would be
for the
great.
whole system.
So Al basically demoted them to white belts again, and I was in that meeting, and I'm like, I don't want to become that guy. And one of the things he said in the meeting was the most important thing to him in his life was his reputation. Well, I understand it because he's making a living doing this. First of all, I didn't think this was going to be that harmful to his reputation, number one. But number
That should
two,
be the worst thing that ever happened.
But number two is like, what other people think of me is controlling how I feel about my life. Seemed absolutely antithetical to the weekends I spent with Bob.
And was this a Zen kind of practice with the meditation?
Oh no.
No. What sort of school of?
It's from something called Siddha Yoga, and it's Siddha Yoga has like great meditation practice. It's a complete yoga. It has
Just breathing and
only naturally.
Huh.
I mean, essentially, the other night we did Siddha Yoga meditation. It's that simple, and most people meditated pretty well actually, but they're probably already experienced. I don't know, but I think it's seated meditation generally, and there are techniques to help you fall into meditation. But once there, your meditation is obviously your own. And Siddha Yoga also has the practice of what's called Jnana Yoga, which is the yoga of wisdom. So it's studying all the old preserved writings of India. And it also has Seva Yoga or Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga is the yoga of action. And that's more or less practicing yoga through selfless service. And it has swadhyaya and mantra repetition, and it has physical yoga, hatha yoga. It has all branches of yoga. But while most people think of yoga as hatha yoga, it's probably one of the least practiced parts of Siddha Yoga.
And do you incorporate that now in your teaching? Do you have meditation
Usually.
time in the class?
Yeah, I mean, I used
beginning
to,
at
I
the end.
mean, as I said, I don't teach that regularly anymore except seminars. So it depends on what's going on in the seminar. There's usually a place for at least a short meditation. But in the early years, I would sit us down and meditate before class, and sometimes it would be 30 minutes later before we would stop.
Well,
And sometimes we would chant, because there are a lot of chants in Siddha Yoga, and we would just do call and response chanting, and actually some people who started with me during those years felt like that was part of Kajukenbo. But
That's
really,
so cool.
it's really not. But
it's part of that's
it's
why
part
it's
of me.
creative, right? It's your own thing that you've passed on.
Yeah.
And was it connected to a religious belief that you had, or was it separate?
I'm not going to say a religious belief because religions are so inside the box. It's not really a religion. It is a practice, and there is a philosophy that underpins Siddha Yoga, which is the writings of the Shiva Sutras and some of the great writings, Abhinavagupta, the writings of Abhinavagupta, the writings of who wrote the Pratibhanya Hridayam. I can't remember. It was Abhinava or somebody else. It's all these old Kashmiri, mostly writings.
But does it involve belief
actually,
in
we take
like
the
all the
truth-
Indian gods and
Not a lot, but they're
it's more of a
present
philosophy?
they're present in the decor, but it's basically the creators of the universe are sort of inert. You know, if you just take the ones that are described as gods in the Hindu pantheon of gods and goddesses, without goddesses nothing happens. And it's because of the goddess or Shakti originally that creation happens, and that everything that happens in the manifest creation is the energy of the goddess. But that's not actually kind of the way we talk about it in Siddha Yoga. We talk about what is your experience. I mean, fundamentally, what Baba used to say is, see God in everyone. God dwells within you as you. And we would say Siddha Yoga is strictly non-dual. So, like Vedanta Yoga, which is probably the more mainstream yoga in India, would say, how do you find the self, or how do you find the divine? How do you find what's universal? And you'd have to say, well, it's not this, and it's surely not this, and it's not the camera, and even it's not us. And Siddha Yoga and Kashmir Shaivism in general says all of this is Shakti. The stuff that it's all made out of, whether it's conscious or unconscious, is made of Shakti. Whether it's inert, whether it's living, right, or a stone, equally Shakti. No difference.
So that was to fit in with the Tai Chi perfectly, right?
Well, we didn't talk about
Everything's
philosophy that
energy
much in Tai Chi, but it does have that. It is a continuum in the same sense. But who knows? It's been inside me a long time.
Yeah.
So I've made them all work
So
together.
there was this inner change, strengthening, clarity, and how did that manifest with the outward, external part of the art?
It's just one being doing it. So it's hard to separate how all of these contributed to the art that it's called Kajukenbo. I mean, if you look...
Do you feel like there was a feedback loop that when you learned more of the outward technical skills and processes that it helped internally as well, or was it more just in one direction?
I think that's a good question. I think that there is a cycle. They feed each other so long as the actions are contemplated. But uncontemplated activity probably does not contribute to much. So, I think if you have an experience if I had an experience in martial arts training that was transformative or was difficult or was whatever it was, and I took the time to contemplate kind of what that meant in the total scheme of things, whether or not it brings me closer to self-knowledge or further away from self-knowledge, and helps direct the choices that I make ongoing, then I would say they're interacting with each other and one feeds the other. It's not so much that there was new knowledge from the external styles that fed the yoga, really not so much. But they bring different things, and I'll give you an example of that. So in yoga, it's on the inside, just almost by definition. And when it's martial arts, it's fairly externalized. And so what happens in that is that in community, for example, when I interact with my classmates, my students, my teachers, it's a fairly intimate relationship. We're taking risks with each other. We're at times hurting each other. We're getting over it. We're processing through it. We're supporting each other, and we're figuring out how to do that. We're challenging each other. We're figuring out how to do that. In the end, as with the early group, we're like family, truly. Closer than a lot of family, to be honest. In yoga, I lived in an ashram for like 8 years, and
in Denver?
No, this ashram was in upstate New York, later on in life. And in yoga, you practice on the inside. There may be other people in the room meditating with you, but there's nothing about their experience and your experience
That's
particularly interacting.
Right. Yeah.
So I would say that people in the meditative disciplines always talk about sangha or sangam, depending on if you're from Tibet or India. But the truth is, community and the lessons of community and the challenges presented by relationship with others is much more rich in the martial arts.
That's an awesome point. I want to let you go into other things at the conference too, but I want to ask about women in the martial arts and human arts, Women's Martial Art Conference, and you started in the 70s. Mm-hmm. Were you the only woman in class?
No, Joyce was there.
Right.
Joyce and I were there, and from time to time other women would come and go. But it was mostly men, and we had to work that out. We had to figure out like how hard we could hit each other. And it went both ways. I mean, we hit them too hard, too.
Did you feel like you had to prove yourself all the time? Or that
we
you were
just, I just
down
felt
on
they were big and strong and you could hit them. And it wouldn't hurt them. But it did, and then you had to back off. After you got a little power, stuff starts to shift. You have to be more careful. As in terms of that environment, I think they're all still my friends to this day, and extremely supportive environment to train with them, extremely supportive, and I've honestly felt supported up till now.
That's awesome.
And so that world I feel like was really great. I know my school wasn't necessarily typical of all schools at the time. And women had to challenge their way into the practice sometimes, but it just never happened that way for us. I was very lucky, and just as an example, Sifu Manente was a student at the University of Oregon at the time, and we were training like 6 to 8 hours a day. We were like living on food stamps and just training. That's all that we loved to do. And so when it came time to go to tournaments, we often didn't have cash, but there was a karate club. He created a karate club there, and even though we weren't students, somehow we were part of the karate club, and so like our travel and our tournament fees, he never charged us a dime for the lessons. We all did it for the love of the art. He did it for the love of the art, and so did we. Sure if the boys had to pay or not, but Joyce and I never paid, I don't think. And I think my first kind of realization that it wasn't that way for everybody is when I went to the first special training camp that I went to, which was like 79 maybe, and there were all these women there who had a very different kind of experience in their schools, and had no idea that so many women were in training. And actually, there weren't that many. There weren't really women's schools. There was Pi Bateman started a women's school during the 70s in Seattle, and the Short sisters, Pauline and Paula Short, they were twins, started a school for women only in Portland at that time.
And all your schools now are co-ed, all the hand-to-hand?
Hand-to-hand's a co-ed school. Seattle Kajukenbo is a co-ed school, although it's returned to being just kids. Seven Star is still a women's only space. But it's still predominantly women.
Cool.
Because it takes a conscious man to come and learn to fight from a woman.
They just haven't found the right one yet.
Well, they just have to, their ego has to be a little bit under control to take that step, just in our culture. I mean, I'm not saying it's right, I'm just saying that that's reality.
It's out there.
So, yeah, I think what the role of women, and it kind of blossomed, I think, during the 80s. And then, I don't know, I think, I don't know what's going on now. I'm not really part of that scene, so.
Yeah. For kids, certainly, there are a lot of girls in classes, which is great. Mm-hmm. And often, especially at the age that most kids start karate, the girls are stronger, and taller, and it just seems like a really wonderful thing for them. Mm-hmm. But I was wondering if you had advice for, let's say, an adult woman who was thinking about martial arts. Is there anything that advice you would give on selecting a school or?
Well, the same advice I give to anybody selecting a school is that go watch class, watch the way people interact, watch the style of teaching that the teacher has, and see if it is aligned with who you are. I mean, it's, there are a lot of schools that I would not feel comfortable training in, but other women feel perfectly comfortable training in, and that's great. It's just, we all have our idiosyncrasies, I guess. And so, actually in the beginning when Joyce and I taught, it was almost all men in the class.
Huh.
I don't even know if there were any women in those early classes. Like I remember one class we started, because it was at the university, had like 4 guys from the University of Oregon football team in there. I mean, it was really weird. We were just...
That's cool.
Goodness. Yeah, we're like baby green belts and these gigantic guys.
So, not to put you on the spot, but the part of the Martial Arts Lineage Project, and I actually have a copy of this book for you.
Mm-hmm.
Tim Johnson, who started it, put together a book, and he had people write in and say what was the most important thing that they learned from the martial arts, and it's called Greatest Lessons.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering if you could think of, it doesn't have to be the most important thing,
Mm-hmm.
but if you had to say one thing or a top thing that you've gotten from the martial arts.
Yeah, there are so many, of course, but...
Looking back on it all, from where you are now, what was
I think it's been part of my path to transformation, so that, of course, is great. I learned how to practice anything. I learned a kind of detachment in battle that applies in sometimes work battles or social battles or other things, to be able to battle on and with equipoise, not to give in to kind of the passions of the moment at times.
And when you say you learned how to practice anything,
Mm-hmm.
how to approach the task,
Yeah,
stay with it.
all of the above. I mean, yeah.
Do you think
as
you would have
I
learned
just
that
started
from
playing the ukulele.
Yeah.
So the ukulele teacher, for example, said he had a website, and so I figured out where he was, and I sent him an email to the contact us line, and I'm like, here's the deal. I'm a total beginner, and I don't want to get any bad habits, so I'd like to take some lessons, and I'd like to take private lessons with you. Are you taking any students? And then before I sent it, I wrote, well, P.S. I practice. And so he called me within about 10 minutes, and he's like, I'm not taking any new students. And he really practiced, and I'm like, I totally practice. I know how to practice. And I was having a class 4 hours later. I think
That's great.
Yeah, I think it's same with acquiring the skill of golf. It's like I'm quite content at the driving range practicing, or out on the course practicing, or I look actually the whole game as practice. I know it's a game and all, but I look at it as practice because it's.
And you must know Jamie Zimran.
I know that she's a golfer. Yeah.
Yeah, and she teaches golf, and she has a whole martial arts.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw the video.
I don't play golf, so I have no insight into that.
The thing about golf is, let's say if you're an average golfer, you swing the club 100 times, and 35, 36 of those times are a putt. So it's not even a full swing. So let's say you're swinging the club 65 times. An average golf swing takes about half a second from start to finish. Maybe a full second if you're slow on your backswing. But you're out there 4.5 hours. And you're playing golf like a minute and a half. The rest of the time you're managing your state. Because if you're not balanced, so in other words, if you're tense in any way, it has an adverse effect on your golf swing. If you're not focused, you're too relaxed, it has an adverse effect on your golf swing. The only way to play golf well is to have equipoise, to be operating where you're focused and relaxed.
So all your sparring skills come into play.
Sparring skills come into play. I mean, all of that, but it's only you. So the battle you're fighting is an inner battle with yourself. Because people, and pretty much everyone does this, they make a great shot, and their celebration gets in the way of their next shot, or they make a poor shot, and their self-criticism gets in the way of their next shot. It's probably 5 minutes later, they're walking down the course to their ball, but it still gets in the way. It's like you haven't been able to process that. And being able to know where your body is and how it's moving, knowing how to generate power from the middle of your body, from your core. These are all things that happen in golf. But the mental game of golf is, it's a powerful meditation, I think.
That's
I mean,
so
it's
cool.
as good as meditation or martial arts, as far as I'm concerned.
And you get to be outdoors.
Yes, you do.
Excellent. Oh no, is there anything else that people should know about you as a person, as a martial artist?
No, I think this is good. I mean, I don't necessarily think people need to know about me, to be honest. I mean,
They do need to know. No, it's inspirational, and sometimes you're practicing and you're alone in your little school somewhere, and you have thoughts and ideas, and it's great to be able to look out in a larger community and say, oh, someone else went through the same process, or they were stuck here and this is how they got out of it, or they found this beneficial. And
yeah, in the abstract, I can see
helps.
that might have some effect, but like a much more hands-on kind of teacher, like have that organic communication between individuals.
So you believe in the direct
Notoriety
transmission?
is not something I've ever sought particularly.
Martial arts is known for its direct transmission, and that's part of why I think the lineage project is important, because who your teacher is has such a huge impact on how you learn and your whole attitude toward the field. And,
Yeah, it's true.
It seems more important in the martial arts somehow than other athletic kind of activities. Maybe because it has.
I don't think it is, actually.
Yeah, so to learn golf, you would also, I guess, seek out a good teacher.
You do. Anything. I think the real transmission of an inspiration between a student and a teacher happens in almost any discipline that requires some lengthy practice. I mean, I don't see how that cannot be the case.
Yeah.
Obviously, I haven't tried all of them, but
No, that's my personal experience. But I think most students don't get that. They're in the class and they hear a lecture, they do a writing assignment, or they're in a group situation. But there aren't
It's
that
so
many
sad,
times.
isn't
It is. It is.
yeah, I think
Sometimes you have to
things would
fight
be
to
better.
get
I can
noticed
tell
or
you
seek
that at
someone
work
out.
it happens all the time. It's like when I sit with my management team, I'm like, what are you doing to grow these supervisor skills?
And what is your work?
My work is I'm the director of distribution for a clothing company called Seven for All Mankind. We
Oh, cool.
make designer jeans.
Oh, 7.
Seven.
I own a pair of those.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And so did you always have another job as well as doing the martial arts?
Always.
And would you like
Except
to
in
just
the early
do
years when I just trained.
when you were living on food stamps?
Yeah.
Have you ever tried to make it your sole source of income so that you didn't have to do something else?
I had a school, but really the students ran it. It was never my sole source of income. Nope. Never did.
So you work like, I know many people who do this and they work so many hours every day because they work all day at a full-time job and then they teach in the evening. Did you have like a burnout factor with that, or?
I think when we first had the school in Eugene at Amazon Kung Fu, there was burnout in the beginning, and then what we did was we asked the students to take on more, and they did.
So you could have a night off.
Yeah, not only that, not just a night off, but the organization of the school and the collection of dues and paying the rent, and
Yeah, it's a lot of work
because I
running
was
a
sort of
school.
detached from that. I really didn't want commerce to be the. I almost didn't want it to have anything to do with the relationship. It was necessary to keep the building open and pay for heat and things like that. But when they wanted to put a wood floor down, they totally did that. They did it all, and I could just show up and teach, and have that teacher relationship with the students, and not the proprietor relationship with the students. And it was good.
That's
For me.
excellent.
I mean, it's not good for everybody. Obviously, I'm not advocating that this is the right way. I'm just saying that's
So I'm
what
interested in
worked
how
for me.
people make it work out, because it is challenging sometimes, I think. Making a living from just doing your martial arts, but then it's
Yeah.
hard to also train for yourself, or if you have a family,
The
and
thing is
running a school.
I wanted a particular kind of living, and I didn't think that was going to come from the martial arts. Nor did I want it to, because I felt like it got in the way. So, so I felt like if I want to have a particular lifestyle, then I need to go make money in a different way. So that was, it's
You've
been
made
good.
it work, so it's good.
Yeah, yeah.
And do you teach at all now, or you do
Only seminars.
Okay, great. Well, this is awesome. You're a totally cool woman, so I'm glad you did it.
All right, thanks.
Thanks so much.
You bet. Thank you.